Greetings! It is I, Countess Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, the second edition of AD&D. Well, we were diving into encounters and using them. Let's finish up some more information about them. Alright, we've talked about a lot of the situations, like the number of monsters that you have in your encounter. There is some other information, some other questions that we asked that we have to answer still. Let's start with one of them. Surprise. Is there a surprise in this encounter? The fact is, just like a person can be surprised, the enemy monsters could be surprised. The fact is, you have to determine how surprise is going to be working on either side. There might not be any surprise. There might even be calling for a surprise check. So, there are situations where surprise could exist here, surprise might not exist. If one side is making a lot of noise, the other is not going to be surprised. Or if both sides are making a lot of noise, again, heroes often use light. That's going to make monsters, especially in areas where there isn't a lot of cover, notice things. Once you kind of figure out the situation that's occurring, where this encounter is occurring, you can begin to build if there is a surprise occurring or not. You have to consider that most of the time, both the heroes and the monsters, or the things that the heroes are going to encounter, aren't expecting to meet each other. This means that there is a good chance of them surprising each other. And then you just look to the circumstances. Is it going to lead to one side or the other? Once you determine that a surprise could possibly occur, basically, let's say our heroes are doing stuff that aren't being very stealthy. These guys generally are. They might notice things over here. Uh-oh. They're going to try to surprise our heroes. Then the surprise check is required. You can modify it depending on the situations, too. So you can see how, as the GM, as the DM, you have a lot of options into determining how surprise is going to be handled for a random encounter. It's not something that's going to be set. It's going to be determined by where it's happening. See, the environment's going to be very important. And the situation, too, depending on what both the characters and what the type of monsters or creatures or NPCs that the people will be encountering. If it's a bunch of knights in armor, they're not very stealthy. They're probably going to be very easily noticed by your players. On the other hand, if your players aren't being very stealthy either, again, no surprise. So you can see how, if it's just a bunch of maybe cats or something, like big cats, a group of tigers that are hunting together, a little unusual, but could happen. Hey, they might notice your people. They might be stealthy. Get the surprise on them. Situational, depends on the creatures. A lot of factors that you're going to have to put together if there's a surprise, if the surprise is modified. Now, once combat begins, we have to determine the range of combat. This makes a big difference. Spells have ranges, ranged attacks have ranges. Maybe someone that wants to run up into melee needs to have a certain distance that he has to know he's got to run up in order to get to the enemies. And this again breaks down to many factors. First off, environment they're in. If you're all in a basic hallway, you're kind of going to be limited in the amount of range you're going to have. If you're out in the wilderness, well, you can have a much larger range. You have to ask what kind of cover it is. When will people see each other first? Is there some kind of surprise? If your heroes are ending up surprising a monster, they can get a lot closer. Or the same way with the monster. If they're surprising it, a lot closer. If no one's surprised and you just kind of walk into each other, well, then it's the first opportunity that you can see each other. If there is no cover, then you guys can see each other at great distances. The terrain might allow you to be like across a large field and be like, there's someone over there. The problem with this is you might not identify as that over there as something that you might be fighting. Yes, you're going to realize it's over there. But getting into the actual combat, getting into the point where you would be like, oh no, it's some kind of monster. Or, oh guys, I guess we should be on guard against whatever this is. That's going to occur at a much smaller range. You're not really going to use that full range, even in this most open of situations. Alright, so now we have our surprise, we have our range. What are the things we are encountering going to react to us? Now, for most monsters, normally they're going to react with, of course, hostility to your players. It's a sort of given most of the time. Animals might see your players as food. A random NPC might depend on it. So here's where we get into the important factors. The first thing you're going to look at is You're going to look at whatever kind of creature, whatever kind of monster, whatever kind of NPC your players are encountering, and get a baseline of what their kind of actions are going to be against your players. Just a baseline. Then you're going to see what your players do. Your players' reactions are going to be very important also. If your players are automatically hostile, then of course, whatever they're fighting against now is going to be hostile. If they attempt to be friendly, well, it's going to depend on what they're attempting to be friendly to. So, once we have players, how they react to whatever you're getting here, now we have our reactions here of our random encounter. Now, you could come up with a reaction based upon the monster, the NPC. If you have details about it, you could use that as an example. Or if you want to, you could choose some random chance. There is a chart in the book where you'd roll 2d10, so from 2 to 20, you'd have a basic reaction. And it's going to be based upon the creature, morale of that creature, a little bit of information that you're going to sort of cross-reference, get all this information. It's going to give you a general idea of a single word, whether it's like hostile, friendly, things like that, that will determine it. You can see the various words in the book, how they're defined, what it means to be them, and how it means on the chart. But effectively, this is only a guideline too. You're rolling this to get a general idea. The exact way that they react to your heroes will again be entirely up to you as the DM. You're going to again use whatever it is as a guideline too. So you're going to take this as a guideline, that as a guideline, meet somewhere in the middle and figure out how these creatures are going to generally react. And then we're taking in the factor of player reaction, like I told you earlier. Put all these things together, and this trifecta, how your random encounter, how what their PCs are encountering, how it will react. The important thing is, whatever the reaction is, you should be able to justify it. That's what it comes down to. The player's actions, the monster itself, whatever you rolled, which should be within the purview of how this creature might act, wherever it meets, justify that that's how they're going to act. And then you've gotten proper action. Now, problems with encounters. Because guess what? Random encounters, when you have them, you might have a problem. They aren't planned out as meticulously as, let's say, as you might have done for other encounters. This is one that you're just sort of using either charts or coming up with your own chart and then throwing it together. And because it is very random in that manner, things can go bad. Or things can go sideways for how you want the encounter to run. This can go, of course, a couple different ways. First off, too difficult. You could throw your characters up against something that you thought they would be able to defeat, and it's kicking their butts, wiping them out. Well, you can do a couple of things here. For one thing, you could have the target there have maybe be have less health. It's sickly. It maybe has less than average hit points. Maybe your players, you just have them deal more damage also. That when you're marking off hit points, you just add a little bit to them. These are a little bit more of the kind of cheatsy kind of things, but they are options to do it to supplement what your players are doing to make it a little bit manageable. Other factors you can do, which are a little less cheatsy, are perhaps that you could have this creature have a certain level of morale that's different than normal. It will run off at a certain point in time, run away, that it wouldn't normally run away at, maybe for different reasons. You could sum up with a reasonable excuse as to why it may run away. If it's something more like an animal or has more animalistic level intelligence, maybe it has some kind of brood that it's really protecting. And it wasn't there to hunt your players, so it's not desperate for food. So beating it away, it's just going to run away. Or for monstrous creatures that might be intelligence, they might not be dumb enough to die to your players. They might be seeing some problems with them and go off and warn someone. You could also look at it this way. You could also have it that the creature itself, whatever it is, makes a mistake in its strategy. There you go. You could just make it have like one or two little mistakes in its strategy that leave openings for your players to exploit and defeat it. If you use any of these kind of strategies, you can make a otherwise very deadly encounter more beatable. You don't want to do something that's just rescuing them outright, right? You still want them to be in a situation where they will get the win. You're just making it easier for them to get the win because it was almost impossible before. Now on the other end of the spectrum, too easy. You could have the encounter too easy. Now, this results in a couple of different things. Let's say that you had, with whatever creature that was too easy, a treasure associated with it. Well, and because of this encounter, it's too easy, they've defeated it. And the thing is, this is both for random encounters or planned encounters. You could use this either way, random or planned. If it's too easy and they gain a bunch of rewards that they really didn't earn, you were supposed to actually like go through something to earn it, you could always plan another encounter. Maybe this creature was connected to some other group that will want that treasure back. Or maybe another group was looking for that treasure that this creature earned, and they're willing to fight the PCs for it. They don't want to beat the PCs, so you could make this a much more difficult encounter. They just want to take a bunch of that treasure and run. So this is an actual way that you can overpower your players to cut down on some of their treasure that they just earned. Now, if you do this, it also might open up a plot hook that maybe your players are going to want to try to get that treasure back from these creatures and go on an adventure where they can gain some experience, maybe get some more treasure slowly but surely, get in some more battles, things like that, that they might plan things out, have a little bit of a comeback here. It's an option. Now, if it was an encounter and it was too easy, but they didn't gain a whole lot of treasure for it or a lot of loot, well, just make it more difficult next time. You haven't really lost anything if it's too easy and there wasn't any kind of big gain for it. There might be a little gain, but it's a balancing act between everything. And since treasure is a big balancing factor, basically stealing it from your players and making them go on an entirely another kind of sideline for the treasure is a great way of making them get stronger and balancing it. But that's it for today. I went over some more details about encounters. I finished answering those major questions, with answering the question on surprise, what it means to be surprised, and how you're going to determine it. Range, how far away from you are you each other when you encounter each other. And of course, reaction, how your creature is going to react, which, as I said earlier, it has to be something you can justify. But you could really come up with any reaction you want to, as long as you can justify it. I told you the three kind of things you can use to influence your idea for what the justification, what the reaction should be. But you could really make up anything as long as you can come up with a great excuse for that anything. I finished up, of course, by talking about problems with encounters. And this isn't just random encounters. This is every encounter. If you come up with a problem of too hard, too easy, I talked about solving. In the next episode, we're finally moving away from encounters. We're going to talk NPCs, because we want to go into detail about NPCs just a little bit more for your games. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support for the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you could always check out my Patreon. Link to the description below. I've got some great rewards there, and it helps to grow and improve the channel. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.